Okay, we got a recording in progress little prompt. Yay.
Yeah.
Great.
So that means it's working.
Yes. We're expecting one more person, but they can, I think, catch up as they come in. It's the Hampton Inn in Kennebunk. So, but I'd like to welcome everyone this morning to the informational session on the EV charging stations. I'm Eleanor Vadney with the Wells Chamber, and I'd like to introduce Beth Widmeyer. She's a member of the Town of Wells Energy Advisory Committee, and she will be introducing our presenter today, Mark Carter. Take it away, Beth.
Thanks, Eleanor, and thank you for setting this up. I appreciate it. As Eleanor said, I'm the chair actually of the Wells Energy Advisory Committee. It's a mouthful, and we've been talking to Mark about setting up some charging stations on the town property. Mark informed us about a grant that was very favorable to towns setting up EV chargers on town property. And I do believe we're going to go forward with probably 4 more chargers on the town property. We already have 4 at the library. But in our brainstorming about where to put them, we thought, really, these belong at locations, and not necessarily town property, but locations where cars want to park for quite a while. These are level 2 chargers, and it takes a good amount of time to get a full charge. So of course we thought about hotels, because these are the perfect location, because the cars are going to be there overnight anyway, and if they're electric vehicles, they would love to get a full charge, which they could do overnight. So we asked Mark to talk to the chamber about a similar grant for commercial properties that Efficiency Maine has. And I believe that I'll just turn it over to him so he can tell you about it. And this is Mark Carter from Real Term Energy. And take it away, Mark.
Thank you very much, Beth. As you said, I'm with Real Term Energy. I live in the big city of Pownell, right outside of Freeport, so I'm not too far away. I'll share a few slides. Trust me, I don't have a lot, but the kind of basic overview slides, and it gives some information specifically on an Efficiency Maine funding opportunity notice that's currently out, where both municipalities as well as private businesses and nonprofits can receive incentive monies to put in level 2 EV chargers. So with that, I am going to whoops. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So let me just go to presentation mode. And I will switch. There.
Yay.
I only have like 6 or 7 slides, so it's not a lot, but we'll talk about EV charging stations, kind of the different levels of technology, and then get into a little more detail on what the Efficiency Maine funding notice is, what it covers, what it doesn't cover, who's eligible, not eligible, and then after, put together just kind of an example revenue slide to see, would it make sense financially to do something along these lines. So with that, I did have one slide just so those who aren't familiar with Real Term Energy. We have offices in Montreal and in Annapolis. So we do nothing but energy saving type projects, right? For the last 10 years, we do a lot of municipal LED streetlights. We did the LED streetlights for the town of Wells, as well as York, Auburn, South Portland, all the way up to Madawaska and down to Bar Harbor and elsewhere. So we've done about 50 municipal LED lighting projects, but we also do EV charging, large-scale battery energy storage, building HVAC optimization. So everything is energy related, and we do operate in 15 U.S. states and 3 Canadian provinces as of now. and we are a certified energy services company, often referred to as an ESCO by the Department of Energy. And we're on Efficiency Maine's list of both EV charger installers as well as software providers. So that's just a little bit about us. Regarding, why, well, I think most people really kind of know that the federal government is dumping a tremendous amount of money to help improve and strengthen the infrastructure for electrical vehicles across the country. And that includes monies for all the highways, the fast DC charging, but also in more rural communities where they're putting a lot of money to spur the installation of a lot of level 2 chargers. So, whether all this comes to fruition or not, I think just me personally in Pownell, I probably knew nobody that had an electric car 3 years ago. And now I know probably 4 or 5 people, and it's growing. So I think the trend also from the data as well as anecdotal, I think you do see the expansion of EV electrical vehicles, which is going to necessarily require more infrastructure. And I think especially so in a state like Maine, where we're heavily dependent on tourism. So you do get a lot of travelers that come from Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York that have higher adoption rates of electrical vehicles, as well as the rental car companies are also starting to adopt and promote the use of electrical vehicles as well. So from a tourist state, I also think that we probably see an influx of a higher rate than maybe even what our the typical Maine EV ownership percentage actually is. So the wave is coming. So I thought I'd just take a minute. I probably most of you know this, but there's really kind of 3 levels of EV chargers. Level 1 is just you plug it into your local, your outlet, your 120 volt standard outlet. I think a cord and a plug comes with every car. Although I think I saw something that the Mach-E now is not going to come with that for some reason. I don't know why, but it's, you're getting, let's see, 120 volts times 15 amps. I think it's something like 1,400 watts. So 1.4 kilowatts is kind of the range. But you're getting, from a transportation perspective, you're probably getting 4 or 5 miles of range per hour. So if you plug it in overnight for 8 hours, you're probably going to get somewhere between 32 and 40 miles of range to your battery. So that's probably the most prevalent homeowners use is the level 1. The level 2, you find much more municipal and business applications. So if your company has one for its employees, or if a restaurant or most municipalities tend to put in level 2 chargers. So those are 240 volts, so it's twice the voltage and typically twice the current as well. 30 and 40 amp is really quite common. We have put in some, or are putting some in, some 80 amp in Cornwall, New York, in their town office, but generally speaking, I think 30 to 40 amp, and that gets you in the, let's say, 25 miles per hour range. So if you plug in for 4 hours, you're probably going to get 100 miles of range or something to that effect. And then the most expensive ones are your DC fast chargers, often called level 3. And that's what you're going to find at the Kennebunk Turnpike and elsewhere, where it's a lot of the Tesla chargers. Now, these are typically referred to in their kilowatts, so 50 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt, or 150 kilowatt. You typically can get a 80% of your battery charge in 15 to 20 minutes. So if you think of a 30 amp, 240 volt, that's 7.2 kilowatts, as opposed to 100 kilowatt, that's 13 times the power. So, every 4 or 5 minutes on a DC fast charger is like an hour on a level 2. But DC fast chargers are typically very, very expensive, somewhere at about $150,000 for hardware and installation. So it's a very large, intensive capital expenditure to put in a DC fast charger. But today we're only going to focus on the level 2 because that's what the Efficiency Maine funding is for. They won't pay anything for level 1s or level 3 as part of this funding notice. It's only for level 2 chargers. And I did put one, if those aren't familiar, there's dozens of EV charging companies out there. We work with a lot of them. The only thing that we kind of recommend to our customers is look for ones that support the open charge point protocol, because then you're not locked into any particular vendor long term. So if you have some sort of software that manages multiple EV chargers, you're not, tied into one particular company. And it's a pretty mature protocol. It's I think 2.0J or something is the latest release, but you see a lot of large companies like NLX and ABB and others have adopted this standard as well. So I think it's certainly already the de facto standard, but I think it's really an industry standard at this point. And you see some of the one in the upper left-hand corner, that's actually a couple we put up in Rumford. George O'Keefe is the economic development manager there. It's kind of a unique one where it's pole mounted. Most of them are ground mounted, but that one is of particular interest, especially in snow covered states like Maine, where you don't have any excavation. All the power is actually fed off the top of the pole. So it's I find it to be an interesting charger for cold weather climates. That's a little bit unique. So to talk about the funding opportunity notice itself. So this is like the 5th or 6th different EV funding notice. They've had one for K-12 schools. They came up with one last fall for 14 of the 16 Maine counties. They excluded Cumberland and York at that time. And then in February, they came out with this one, which is specific to what they're calling rural communities in Cumberland and York. And that really is every community except for Portland, South Portland, and Westbrook. So it is getting toward the end of the application deadline, which is June 30th. Some of the requirements are you have to put at least 2, but no more than 4 per site. So if you own multiple properties in throughout the counties, you can actually send in a separate application for each and every site. So you're not limited to one site, but you are limited to 4 and no less than 2 at any given site. Now they do offer more money for municipalities, but for businesses and nonprofits, non-municipal customers, they're offering $5,000 per plug. So if I go back to my last slide, if you look, a lot of these charging stations have 2 separate cords, so that each one is considered a plug. So in this instance, 2 plugs, you could get up to $10,000 in cost, up to 80%. So if those 2 plugs cost you $10,000, they won't give you $10,000; they'll only give you $8,000. Again, up to 80% of your total cost. If you just want to put some in that are non-networked, you don't have any software, then they'll pay up to $2,000 per plug, up to 90% of the cost. It tends not to work out as well as the network chargers, and that's because most of your costs are in your excavation, conduit, cable, and most of that you have to do whether you do networked or non-networked. So you tend to make more money or get more incentives and have a lower total cost of ownership over 5 years by going with network, but they do provide a non-network charging option. And I won't go through the list, but there's a list of ineligible properties like private home and Airbnbs and such. So they do specifically rule out certain properties that are not eligible. So there are some basic requirements. You're using state money, so they want it available to the public year round. There is a waiver possible. I know we've looked at, I think down in Harpswell, we looked at a beach where they close off access during the winter. You can submit for a waiver. I think they'll probably hold it against you if they run out of money and they're evaluating between 2. But I suspect if they have the money, that if you're a seasonal operation and you're closed from January to March, that you would still likely get the money if it was available. But there is a waiver process that if you don't have the capability to make your property accessible 24/7, 365 to the public, they want you to own and operate them for 5 years, and as part of the provide basic snow clearing operations, and you do have to list them as public on some openly available EV charging websites. PlugShare is the one I typically use, but there's this Alternative Fuels data center website. There may be others as well, but I think you'll find that PlugShare is pretty common use. Now, what's covered under this cost is effectively everything needed to install and operate the units up to 5 years. So that includes the actual equipment itself. Do you have to put any cement base pads or bollards or run conduit cable? Or maybe you have to put in some new electrical service upgrades. Maybe you have a sub panel that's feeding the outside and it's only 100 amp and you need to pay to upgrade that to 200 amp. They'll pay for those costs, or I say pay for them. They'll allow you to include those in your incentive applications. So mounting, construction, anything extended warranty, software, maintenance, up to 5 years, those things tend to need to be prepaid. So if you're going to do 5 years of software, you have to prepay for the 5 years of software to get it included in the eligible cost. So they will include that. So that's kind of a summary from the funding opportunity notice. And so I went to, this is actually right off of the PlugShare website. So I typed in wells. I wanted to kind of see what you had for infrastructure. It's probably, relatively light, especially for a tourist town. If you look, the Wells Plaza has a bunch of DC fast chargers. Those are Tesla. So if you don't have a Tesla, that's a different plug style. So it's a closed network. So you wouldn't be able to, if you have a Nissan Leaf or a Ford or what have you, you wouldn't have the ability to charge at those networks. So probably the two that are most comparable would be like the Wells Public Library and the People's Choice Credit Union, which is in construction. And just for reference, that little wrench symbol means it's in construction. And if you see the charger stations, they're up and running. And green indicates level 2 chargers, and the orange tannish colors represents a DC fast charger. So the Wells Public Library, they charge $3 per hour. So if you divide that by 7.2 kilowatts, if it's 30 amp 240, a typical level 2 charger, that's about 42 cents a kilowatt hour is what they're charging. And the People's Choice is not yet completed, but on the PlugShare site, they've already have listed that they'll be charging 50 cents a kilowatt hour. So to give you a rough feel for what different companies or businesses are charging for the public use. And I guess that kind of makes sense if you think, CMP just upped their rates to, somewhere in the 25-26 cent per kilowatt hour range. So it's about 2 times to cover the hardware costs and the operation, the maintenance and such. And there is another one, looks like Haven by the Sea, but it looks like it's more geared toward, to guests of that hotel, right? So they charge a pretty high non-guest fee, and it looks like it's a Tesla only level 2 charger. So I'm not familiar with that per se, but it's doesn't look like it'd be particularly conducive to general, public tourists or locals to charge there. So that's there may be others that they haven't listed on PlugShare, but that's currently what we see available on the PlugShare site. So I wanted to put together just a rough cost benefit type analysis. So, and the cost is pretty, I would think is probably pretty accurate. I think it's on the high side. We pulled this directly from a quote we did for the town of Harpswell. They wanted to put in 4 chargers. It included ripping up some asphalt, running conduit cables, cement base stations, bollards, the whole 9 yards, as well as the 5 years of software extended warranty. So I didn't want to put an unrealistic price in there. If you were mounting to a building, it would likely be much less cost if you already had power pulled to a particular location. So I do think this is probably on the higher side, but be that as it may. So at $38,000 with the Efficiency Maine rebate, if you did 4 plugs, your net cost would be in the $18,000 range. So I know Maine is a seasonal, you're going to get more in the summer and fall than you're going to get in the winter, spring in most cases. But if you just assume 4 hours of operation per day per charger, and you charge 50 cents as the People Choice Credit Union is going to do, that would result in about $10,500 of revenue a year. So since you already have 5 years already prepaid and pre-billed, over 5 years, you could stand to make over $30,000. But what I think for a lot of locations is that it's not just the direct revenue. Is would you get more hotel stay nights? Would you get more people to your shops, to your restaurants? If when they looked up plug share, I need a charge, I might as well, hey, I'm going to eat anyways, or I'm going to look for a place that has that. Would that provide incremental revenue just from your core business? And that's hard to define quantitatively without having that and getting feedback, but it certainly stands to reason. And the one example that I've shown, we actually just quoting a Hampton Inn actually up in Freeport. We look at each site on some of the major hotel booking sites. So this is Kayak. 9 of the 13 as of 18 months ago all had a filter for EV charging. So I picked a date out in October, knowing that maybe a lot of hotels and inns are already full for the summer. I wanted to make sure I got as many as available, hotel type properties. So 74 hotels came up when I just typed in Wells, Maine for checking in October 3rd, checking out October 4th. But when I click the EV charging filter, it drops to 3. So as you can see, if somebody's traveling from out of state, there might be some strong incentive for somebody to pick one of those 3 as opposed to the other 71. So, over time, this may become ubiquitous and everybody will have it, just like everybody typically has Wi-Fi now that didn't 10, 15 years ago. But certainly as of today, there's a lot of room for growth for EV charging infrastructure at hotels. So that's all I had for that. So I'm happy to take any questions. Let me just stop the share it, and hopefully it was of some interest to you all in regards to what's available. And I do suspect over time that as the state of Maine and Efficiency Maine gets more funding, that there probably will likely be additional funding notices. Lord only knows when and where and what the structure of that's going to look like. Will it be as lucrative, more lucrative, less lucrative? It's hard to project what that will be, but I would suspect there will be additional funding notices moving forward. Yes,
Mark, I've got a couple of questions. So obviously, if you have an EV car, do you carry a card around that would take care of all these charges?
It's a good question. If you've got a Tesla and you charge at a Tesla station, they have their own closed network, so they know when you plug in who you are, and you'll eventually get billed. Most other locations, they either have a payment station, or generally there'll be a QR code where you scan the QR code and it brings up a website, and it'll allow you to either do a one-time payment to say, or allow you to download their app. Or some apps already have accessibility to those. So inside of an electrical vehicle charging app, it'll say, what's the closest one to me? And if you already have money on your account or tied to a credit card, you just go and in some cases you can reserve spots. You go and charge. But worst case, you typically can do it one time to say, I'm happy to be traveling in Western Mass. I don't want to download your app. I don't need another app on my phone. I'll just put in my credit card through a secure location on the phone. And in some cases, I don't see it a lot, but sometimes they'll actually just have a credit card reader, and you'll actually be able to pay right there at that station. So those are typical ways to buy or pay for your electricity.
See, that's how I was wondering how do you get your money if you have the charger at your property and things like that.
Yeah, through the app, and it goes through a payment processor, and they'll take 3 or 4% or whatever their cut is, and then they transfer all the monies back
Mhm.
into your bank account.
Yeah, yeah. And you had said that the website, that plugshare.com. So, because I remember I Googled this a few weeks ago, just about, where there were some EV charging stations. And it was a slew of different sites to click onto, but I like this. I'll have to check out that plugshare.com.
Yeah, I mean, I found it convenient, but, and it's also one of the two that Efficiency Maine requires you to use. So that's why I thought that's the most pertinent. I'm sure there's lots of other sites out there, but
Sure.
PlugShare seems to have, quite a bit of, quite a strong following.
Mhm. Great.
I had a quick question, Mark. If I'm a hotel owner and I would like to give my guests either a lower rate or a free pass on using the charger, can I do that and then charge the public a high enough rate to offset that? Is that within the rules of the grant or not?
Yeah, it's not detailed. You can't do that, and that's exactly what a lot of hotels will do. Will offer a subsidized or a free rate for customers. So they can either hand out RFID card or provide a code that they can punch in. So they'll get either a free or a reduced cost, and then they'll have a separate a different charge for your standard non-guest who would pull up and use that. So. And there are some options to do that on a time of day basis as well. Maybe you charge more during the day versus the night, or I'm not sure that's as pertinent here, but it is another way to differentiate. If you're trying to entice people to charge certain times of the day, maybe your guests are more likely to be there at night, so maybe you charge a lower rate at night, and then people just traveling through Wells, and want an hour charge might be more apt to do it during the day. But there are different strategies in the software to do that. Mm-hmm. And you could actually provide your hotel employees codes so they could get free or reduced charges as well to help, promote electrical vehicles for your staff.
Sure, I could see that would work well with your guests possibly charging overnight and your employees possibly charging during the day. So complementary.
Yeah.
The other quick question is, I know we're hoping to put the recording up on a couple of different places of this presentation. I'm wondering if you'd be okay with sharing your slides as well.
Yeah. Yep, I would be happy to do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Dan or Nathan, do either of you have any questions for Mark?
I just have a couple. Can you just clarify, please, Mark, the networked versus unnetworked? I'm sure you said it. It just went over my pre-caffeinated brain.
I mentioned it, but I don't think I explained it. So my apologies for that. But non-networked, it's not connected to the internet in no fashion. So if you want to charge, you'll have to have some sort of payment station there for them to actually charge with a credit card reader or some fashion. Or if you want to be, generous and give it away for free, I mean, you can put a non-network charger in, not charge for it, and Efficiency Maine will still pay you $2,000 per plug to do that. But the networked ones will either be tied back to the cloud internet somehow, either through a Wi-Fi or some sort of Ethernet connection, and that's going to allow for mobile applications. So when you go and scan that QR code, it'll bring up the site that allow them to enter their credit card information or use their existing EV charging app to actually connect to and pay for the charging session.
Okay. And is the pay station part of the upfront cost, or is that a separate deal?
No, that would be part of the upfront cost.
Okay. And the expiration date I saw on one of your slides for signing up is June 30th. What is the deadline for actually having them installed?
Oh, currently it's December 31st. So you just have to apply by June 30th. They generally have 2 to 4 weeks to get your application back. We found the lead times not to be that terrible thus far. A lot of our manufacturers are in that 4 week plus or minus a week or two. And it's, you know, it's depending on the complexity of the installation. So again, if you're mounting to a building and all you got to do is run some conduit from your electrical panel over to the outside wall and drill a hole, you know, that's a lot less onerous than if you have to get an excavator in there and dig a trench and put in cement base stations and all that. So, you know, that is a you know, that's a much more involved, much more costly than you got to arrange equipment. But we still think that December 30th is more than adequate to get the units in. And I think based on previous funding opportunity notices that Efficiency Maine is willing to, you know, I don't think January 1st are going to come down and start finding you, but I think they want to see a light at the end of the tunnel, that you're not going to take this money and then 3 years later you're still, you know, messing with trying to get it installed. I think they want to see some, you know, they want to see the fruits of their labor, the results of the money to start helping the infrastructure and as soon as possible.
Okay. And I've used the pay stations in Portsmouth, the public garages before, and they seem to work really well, as you described, with a credit card or whatever. And the Cliff House in Agunquit has an amazing array of them. And I stopped there once for breakfast, and they had they had one Tesla and then one hybrid plug-in. And I can't remember, but they had at least 6, I think. And I'm curious as to why the ones in Wells are mainly Tesla. I know there was another company about a month ago that talked about joining on the Tesla's plug, the car manufacturers. I can't remember who it was, but is there a plan in this infrastructure world of EV cards to make them common, or will you'll always need 2?
Well, I haven't talked to Elon Musk yet this morning, so I will check with him, but
Like iPhone versus Droid. Plugs drive me nuts.
The reason you see so many Tesla is that they're paying for it, right? They're paying the cost. They're building the infrastructure out, which I believe is to, you know, they've generated such a following, and they have a very robust infrastructure, and they're almost all fast DC chargers as well. Is that it promotes the sale of their electric vehicles, right? So it is a closed network. It's kind of self-serving that, hey, we'll pay the hundreds of thousands of dollars to install. I mean, I know there's like 6 or 8, you know, next to LL Beans up here, and they're all Tesla fast chargers, but it doesn't cost the property owner anything. Or, you know, they're putting it at their cost. Now there has been discussions about opening that up, you know, so you kind of lose that exclusivity. Why do I need to buy a Tesla now if anybody can use their chargers? I'm sure they're going to be charged a lot more than Tesla owners, but I think that's something that's yet to play out. And but I'm hopeful for just the whole ecosystem of EV chargers that they would benefit. I think the whole industry greatly. It's just not certain yet that they'll actually do that.
The timing is beautiful because we have for Nautical Mile, Eleanor, we have a 4:00 board meeting. And also we have Building 1 that was basically destroyed February 5th. We had the deep freeze on February 4th. And then when everything thawed, the fire extinguisher systems failed. And so it's flooded. It's been emptied. It's under construction now. It'll probably be by the end of the year. But I think that it would be an opportune time to take advantage of the grant while they're digging up that first building and plan ahead. So if you can send, I won't give as eloquent of a presentation as you, Mark, but I will at least have those cheat notes of the slides. That would be helpful for me to discuss under new items with the board today?
Dan, I have a copy that Mark had sent me, so I can email those directly over to you.
Oh, if you want, Eleanor, I might have made a couple changes, but I can send it to you
Oh.
directly after this. Yeah.
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you, Mark.
No worries. And I may be down with our electrician on Thursday. I needed to talk with Beth as well as the town manager to actually have a few hours of our electrical contractors time to look at some town sites. Because we need to evaluate where's power, where do you want to locate it, what do we need for infrastructure. So if anybody's interested, we may be in town in Wells on Thursday morning anyway. So if that's of interest, let me know. If not, that's fine too. We could come back at a later time, but
I'll be there. We're right next to Congdon's Donuts, so everybody knows where we are when I tell them that. Nobody knows where nautical mile is, but everybody knows where Congdon's Donuts are.
Well, it's by the Mike's Clam Shack too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, just up the street, down the street, up the street, somewhere. Same side of the street.
So with that, I'll go ahead, Eleanor, and Beth, I'll send you out the copy of the presentation and
Well, and I'll just forward it over to Dan, and this way he'll have your contact information. If he needs someone to come down and take a quick look at the site or anything like that. So,
yeah, because we'd bring he's a master electrician, so we need a master electrician to come take a look and provide a quote or an estimate to us to put together a complete package. But and we generally will help the businesses actually fill out the app. There's one application, but there's like 4 attachments. So the product specs, a picture of the property, a quote, and then the generic basic information of the property site. So we've done this for a restaurant and some other private businesses. So we're happy to kind of help you through that process as well.
great. Now, Nathan, did you have any questions at all for Mark?
No, I think we're good. I mean, I think we're definitely interested in getting an estimate. I know the timeline's pretty tight, but I think it's definitely something we'd like to look at moving forward with.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll send the info. If you have any questions, just reach out. Like I said, I'm not too far away, and if we could set up some meetings on Thursday to take a look, just 15 minutes, look at the property, we'd be happy to put together.
I'd love to do that. I'd be very interested in having you come take a look at our property and get some pricing together for us.
Okay.
Nathan, I
Okay,
can
Mark.
forward the information to Angela for you.
Great. Well, thank you all. I hope you all have a great week.
Okay,
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beth and Eleanor, I appreciate it, setting it up.
Thank you all for coming.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank
bye.
you.